I'm Dana Shagru with CEA World Greenhouse Produce, an innovative brand that engages with the rapidly expanding global greenhouse produce industry through a variety of platforms. Our mission is to educate and connect greenhouse produce growers and industry allies to help them better understand and sustainably advance the global food industry. On this episode of CEA Ag Talks, I'll be speaking with Bob Jones, co-owner and CEO of the Chef's Garden in Huron, Ohio, and Henry Gordon Smith, founder and CEO of Agritecture. Bob and Henry, welcome to CEA Ag Talks. We're excited to have you here, and we're thrilled you're keynoting for us at the CEA Ag World Conference and Expo next month.
Thanks so much for having us.
Good morning.
Well, Bob, you have traditional outdoor fields as well as permanent and less permanent and movable structures. What kind of structures and coverings do you use, and how do you determine which ones work for which crops?
It's mostly trial and error. We have a combination of almost every kind of protected environment growing that you can think of. It really is about getting out and seeing other people, seeing other places, reading. The internet has been fascinating to help speed up that growth. And then trial and error. Grow crops in different settings, grow crops. Different crops respond seasonally different to light conditions. That's been the real benefit to dynamic LED, is the ability to be able to create the summer in the winter. Yeah, I think you just learn and by doing, and part of it is just that I'm getting old, I guess. But I've made a lot of mistakes. We're not really that smart, but we learn from our mistakes. We just have to make mistakes at a faster rate than our competition.
Now, Henry, you have a global perspective on CEA. What are you hearing from different geographic markets, and how does each relate to what we're experiencing in North America?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we work all around the world. I just recently got off a call with one of our clients in the United Arab Emirates. There, of course, they are running out of groundwater in dramatic ways. They're using desalinated water, and they have extreme climates that they really can't grow a lot of crops outdoors. And yet, they really do have a need and a desire to be more food secure. So controlled environment agriculture there is necessary. And there are certainly examples of greenhouses and other types of CEA in the Middle East, but they're really not as mature as other parts of the world. And so, so often we think of CEA as just sort of being this system that you can plot anywhere in the world, and it's going to basically grow year round. Well, in fact, there's a lot of different types of greenhouses, and there's a lot of design work that we have to go into to think about, okay, what's the benefit of creating, for example, a fully closed greenhouse versus a semi-closed greenhouse? What are we losing on yield or water that relate to these local conditions? What about the increased CapEx that you typically have to spend with more high-tech farms? So, actually adopting the technology and adapting it to farmers' needs in these regions, in the Middle East in particular, is a really big challenge. There's also less maturity around the construction of these farms. So often the projects go over budget or over time. So it really is a reminder that, countries themselves need to invest in not just building farms, but the skills needed, the services related to that, the supply chains related to that to make that possible. There's so many parts that go into making a farm successful, from the growers' skills to the policies that allow them to do that. And again, the supply chain, that's what I see around the world, is that those are quite different everywhere in the world. And I think we're seeing more and more countries have a desire to increase food security in a resilient way, which controlled environment agriculture can provide, but they have to really invest in a lot of layers to get that done. So, in Europe, for example, it's so mature, right? It's almost commoditized, the greenhouses and the pricing for them and the way you can manage them. But not all of Europe. If you look in Northern Europe, we're seeing a large growth in this that's quite different and new. What's typical. And so even the suppliers there have to get used to new markets and more extreme cold conditions. What I find interesting about North America is, especially the United States, is that how fragmented it is, right? If we look, the Netherlands has a huge cluster of greenhouses. Spain has a huge cluster of greenhouses. Canada has a cluster in Leamington and even some in BC. But the United States, there's no real government-funded cluster of greenhouses that's developed. And so farmers, even Bob on their own, have to really figure these things out on their own in their own place for their own farm. And I think that's a pretty big difference from how governments have gotten involved in this in other parts of the world. So I really like those differences. That's probably the favorite part of my job and the most challenging is you have to really look on the ground, not just that the energy rates, the water rates, the climate conditions that are going to change your design, but who's actually going to be operating it? And do they have the skills to do that? And how is going to construct this? And how do I think about how to make that pathway as seamless as possible? But I think it's very, very exciting that in the face of climate change and these shocks in the system that we're facing that can be pretty depressing, we do have this renaissance of this new model for agriculture that's developing around the world. It is spreading rapidly in other parts of the world. I think even for us, we have more work outside of the United States than in the United States at this point for agritecture.
Yeah, definitely very interesting stuff, and things to consider from a global perspective. I think that concludes our talk here. Thank you both again for joining me on this episode of CE Ag Talks, and we look forward to talking with you again in Raleigh.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to it. See you, Raleigh.